Yorkshire is one of the most recognizable places in England, and one of the most misunderstood. Outsiders think they know it. Flat caps and whippets, tight with money, grim mills and endless rain. A simple, blunt rural folk who never leave their valleys. Almost all of it is wrong, oversimplified, or based on a cartoon that has very little to do with the real place. The most famous Yorkshire dish wasn't invented as a dessert. The Wars of the Roses weren't fought the way you think. Yorkshire isn't even one county, and hasn't been for 50 years. And the single most famous fact everybody knows about the Wars of the Roses gets the entire thing backwards. These are 13 things everyone gets wrong about Yorkshire. And number 1 will overturn something you were probably taught in school. This is Dust and Stories. Subscribe, because if you're going to talk about God's own county, you'd best get it right. Number 13. Everyone in Yorkshire wears a flat cap and owns a whippet. Let's get the most tired stereotype out of the way first. The image of the typical Yorkshireman as a dour figure in a flat cap, walking a whippet across a muddy field, is a cartoon that has almost nothing to do with modern Yorkshire. Yorkshire is home to over 5 million people. It contains major cities: Leeds, Sheffield, Bradford, York, Hull, with thriving arts scenes, universities, tech industries, and some of the most diverse populations in Britain. The flat cap and whippet image comes from a particular slice of rural and industrial working class life that was never universal, even when it was at its peak. Yorkshire people themselves find the stereotype exhausting. There's a long-running irritation in the county at national broadcasters who can't introduce anything about Yorkshire without putting on a comedy accent and saying, "Eba gum." One Yorkshire newspaper columnist wrote about wanting to shout at the radio every time an announcer dropped their normal diction to do a bit of ho-ho, ho-ho at Yorkshire's expense. Something they would never dream of doing for Liverpool or Birmingham. Yes, flat caps exist. Yes, whippets are lovely dogs. No, it is not a uniform. And no, the 5 million people of modern Yorkshire do not spend their days walking the moors in tweed. Number 12, Yorkshire people are tight with money. This is the stereotype Yorkshire folk hear more than any other. There's even a saying, a Yorkshireman is a Scotsman with all the generosity squeezed out of him. The truth is more interesting. What outsiders read as stinginess, Yorkshire people see as good sense, not wasting money, not paying over the odds, not being taken for a fool. It's a value system rooted in generations of hard industrial and agricultural life where money was scarce and had to be respected. But the idea that Yorkshire people are mean is contradicted by anyone who's actually spent time there. Yorkshire has a powerful culture of community, hospitality, and looking after your own. The tight stereotype is something Yorkshire people now play up to as a joke, leaning into it for laughs rather than because it's true. Number 11. Yorkshire is one county. It hasn't been for 50 years. In 1974, the historic county of Yorkshire was reorganized into separate administrative areas: North Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, and the East Riding of Yorkshire, along with bits absorbed into other counties entirely. Administratively, Yorkshire, as a single county, no longer exists. And yet, here's the fascinating part, the identity refused to die. People from all 4 areas still call themselves Yorkshire folk first and foremost. Yorkshire Day, celebrated every 1st of August, the Yorkshire flag, the Yorkshire identity, all of it persists across administrative boundaries that the government drew 50 years ago. There have been long-running campaigns to give Yorkshire more formal recognition, even calls for a devolved Yorkshire Assembly representing the whole historic county. Yorkshire is proof that you can abolish a county on paper and completely fail to abolish it in people's hearts. Tell a man from Sheffield and a woman from Hull that they're not from the same place because of a 1974 boundary change, and watch how quickly they unite to tell you you're wrong. Number 10. Yorkshire pudding is a dessert. Or, wait, is it? This one's complicated, and that's the point. Yorkshire pudding is known around the world as a savory side dish served with roast beef and gravy. But historically, the picture is messier. The dish was first recorded in cookbooks in the 18th century under the name dripping pudding, cooked in the fat dripping from roasting meat. In hard times, it was served first, on its own with gravy, to fill people up before the expensive meat course. And leftover batter was often turned into a sweet dish, served with jam, sugar, or syrup as an actual dessert. So the people who insist Yorkshire pudding is only a savory side are wrong, and the people who serve it with jam aren't being eccentric. They're following a genuine old Yorkshire tradition. In Yorkshire, the pudding has been a starter, a side, and a dessert, often at the same meal. Number 9. The Yorkshire accent is just northern. There is no single northern accent, and lumping Yorkshire in with it drives locals mad. The Yorkshire accent is distinct from Lancashire, distinct from Geordie, distinct from Scouse, and it isn't even uniform within Yorkshire itself. The broad vowels of Sheffield differ from the dialect of the Dales, which differs from the speech of Hull, which differs from York. And the Yorkshire dialect preserves words from Old Norse that exist almost nowhere else. Like for play, beck for stream, gentle for alleyway. When a national broadcaster does a generic e-ba-gum northern accent to represent Yorkshire, they're flattening one of the richest and most distinctive dialects in the English-speaking world into a lazy cartoon. Number 8. Yorkshire is grim and industrial. The image of Yorkshire as a land of dark satanic mills, smoke, and grime is a Victorian snapshot that the rest of the world never updated. Yes, Yorkshire was a powerhouse of the Industrial Revolution. But Yorkshire also contains some of the most beautiful landscapes in Britain. The Yorkshire Dales, the North York Moors, a stretch of dramatic coastline, and a third of all the national parks in England. The county is overwhelmingly rural in area. The mills that gave Yorkshire its grim reputation are now, in many cases, converted into apartments, galleries, and museums. The reality is a county of staggering natural beauty that happens to have a few industrial cities, not an endless smokestack. Number 7. It always rains in Yorkshire. Yorkshire has a reputation for permanent drizzle, but the figures don't support it. The eastern side of Yorkshire, including the East Riding and the area around York, is actually one of the drier parts of England, sheltered from the worst Atlantic weather by the Pennines to the west. The high moors and the western dales get genuinely wet, but the idea that the entire county lives under a permanent gray cloud is wrong. Eastern Yorkshire gets less rain than London on some measures. The Yorkshire rain stereotype is another case of one slice of the county standing in for the whole. If you're enjoying having your assumptions overturned, hit subscribe right now. The next 6 get into the real history. Number 6, Robin Hood was from Nottingham. We've touched on this before, but it bears repeating in full because the Nottingham claim is so universally accepted. The earliest written ballads about Robin Hood, the medieval sources, the oldest versions of the legend, place him not in Sherwood Forest but in Barnesdale in South Yorkshire. The grave traditionally said to be his is at Kirklees Priory in West Yorkshire, where legend says the dying Robin fired an arrow and asked to be buried where it landed. The strong association with Nottingham came later, partly through the figure of the Sheriff of Nottingham. But the oldest Robin Hood was, in all likelihood, a Yorkshireman. Nottingham has spent centuries claiming a hero who may well have belonged to Yorkshire all along. Number 5. Captain Cook was from Whitby. Whitby claims Captain James Cook, and Whitby has a real connection to him. But he wasn't born there. Cook was born in the village of Marton, near Middlesbrough, in 1728, and grew up in the area around Great Ayton. He moved to Whitby as a young man to begin his seafaring apprenticeship on the coal ships, and the town shaped his career. The ships he later sailed on his voyages of discovery were Whitby built. But the common belief that Cook was a Whitby man by birth is wrong. He was a North Yorkshire farm boy who went to Whitby to learn the sea. The distinction matters to the people of Marton and Great Ayton, who are quietly tired of Whitby getting all the credit. Number 4. York and Yorkshire are the same thing. Outsiders often use York and Yorkshire interchangeably, and they're not the same. York is a single city, a magnificent ancient city with Roman walls, a Viking past, and one of the greatest Gothic cathedrals in Europe. Yorkshire is the vast county named after it. York is the historic capital, but it's not even the largest city in Yorkshire today. Leeds and Sheffield are both far bigger. Calling the whole county York is like calling the whole of a country by the name of its capital. The city gave the county its name 1,000 years ago, but the two are very different things, and Yorkshire people will correct you. Number 3. Yorkshire and Lancashire still hate each other. The Wars of the Roses, the 15th century dynastic struggle between the House of York and the House of Lancaster, left a legend of eternal enmity between Yorkshire and Lancashire, symbolized by the white rose and the red rose. The rivalry is real today, but it's almost entirely friendly, expressed through cricket, through banter, through the roses matches between the two counties' teams. The idea that there's genuine historical hatred is overblown. And as we're about to see, the popular understanding of the Wars of the Roses themselves is almost completely wrong. Number 2, Yorkshire pudding was invented to be eaten with roast beef. As we touched on earlier, this is backwards. The pudding came first as a way of using up the fat and filling people up cheaply, and was often eaten before or even instead of the meat, because the meat was the expensive part that poorer families couldn't always afford. The cozy modern image of the pudding as the natural companion to a generous joint of roast beef inverts its actual origin. Yorkshire pudding wasn't designed to complement abundance. It was designed to stretch scarcity, to fill the belly when there wasn't enough meat to go around. Its history is a history of making do, not of feasting. Number 1, the House of York was supported by Yorkshire. And here's the big one, the fact that overturns what most people assume about the Wars of the Roses. The conflict is named for the House of York and the House of Lancaster, and the natural assumption is that Yorkshire backed York and Lancashire backed Lancaster. The reality is almost exactly the opposite. The House of York actually drew most of its support from southern England, and northern England, on both sides of the Pennines, including much of Yorkshire, largely supported the House of Lancaster. The city of York itself was a Lancastrian power base. The House of York was named after the Dukedom of York, a title not after the loyalties of the county. So the popular image of loyal Yorkshiremen fighting under the white rose against the red rose of Lancashire is historically mostly false. Yorkshire's own city was on the other side. In fact, after the Yorkist King Edward IV seized power, York remained suspicious of him, and it was the Lancastrian cause that ran deep in the north. The roses themselves were barely used as symbols during the actual wars. The idea of a War of the Roses fought between a red rose Lancashire and a white rose Yorkshire was popularized centuries later, largely by the novelist Sir Walter Scott in the 19th century. The white rose became the emblem of Yorkshire long after the wars were over, adopted as a county symbol by people who had forgotten, or never knew, that during the actual conflict, their ancestors were more likely to have been fighting for the other team. Yorkshire flies the white rose today with total pride and total conviction, and it's flying the banner of a royal house that drew its real strength from the south, while the county's own capital backed the enemy. Yorkshire is a place the rest of the world thinks it understands and mostly doesn't. It's not a cartoon of flat-caps and whippets and drizzle and stinginess. It's England's largest historic county, a land of cities and moors and coastline, with a fierce identity that survived the abolition of the county itself, a dialect descended from the Vikings, and a history so tangled that even the war named after its symbol was mostly fought against it. The next time someone tells you what Yorkshire is, you'll know better. And so, now, do they, if they watched this far? If this video changed how you see Yorkshire, subscribe to Dust and Stories. We take the places everyone thinks they know and show you what's actually underneath. Like the video. Drop a comment telling us which one you'd believed your whole life. And thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.